Greetings and welcome to part 3. In this video we're going to talk about Daniel 8:14 and the 2,300 days, and we're also going to talk about the different endings that I have shown you throughout my videos. Daniel chapter 8 verses 13 and 14. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. The 7-year period in days is 2,520. That is only 220 days more than 2,300. That shows us that the daily sacrifice, the first thing talked about, has to start in the first year of the tribulation. The problem is, where do we count from? So we start with the daily sacrifice. The transgression of desolation is the abomination of desolation. That's when the sacrifice stops. And then to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. We've already talked about this. Revelation chapter 11 verse 2. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. So let's go back to the timeline. Revelation 11:2 was counted from this total solar eclipse 42 months to this total solar eclipse. If we count backwards from this total solar eclipse 2,300 days, let's see where we land. That winds up on this day, the new year for tithing animals. That is the 28th of August of this year, 2014. Another interesting thing about this day is that the first temple was dedicated on this day, and the second temple was dedicated on this day. Now that does not mean that the big temple will be finished at this time, but all they need is a tent temple, just like they used when they were wandering in the wilderness. That means that they could have a temple set up by this time and start sacrificing animals. So this day is 2,300 days before the total solar eclipse at the end. It is the new year for tithing animals. It is when the first and second temple were dedicated. And let's go look and see what is up in the heavens on this day. Here is what we see on August 28th of this year. And I want you to notice everything that's here. We have the sun, the moon, and the 5 wandering stars that we see with the naked eye. I have included Regulus because this is the king star, and Venus, which represents Jesus, is right between the king star and the king planet. Now I think this sign is representing something more than what we're seeing here. But before we get into that, I need to talk about something else. In the heavens, we have Saturn that represents Satan. We have Venus that represents Jesus. We have Jupiter the king, Mercury the messenger, and Mars war. But what represents the Holy Spirit? I believe the Holy Spirit has been leading me to tell you that the moon sometimes represents the Holy Spirit. So back to our timeline. In this sign, the moon represents the moon. In this sign, it kind of stamps this to say, pay attention. It stamps this sign. It stamps this sign. In this sign, it plays part of the cross. In this sign, it plays part of the cross. Here, it represents the angel standing in the sun. The moon seems to represent a bunch of different things, and it's involved in everything, just like the Holy Spirit would be. So, in a sense, at least in my mind, the Holy Spirit is represented by the moon. Now, along those same lines, in this sign, the sun represents the sun. In this sign, the sun represents the fiery red dragon. But what does the sun represent in this sign? And what does it represent in this sign? And this sign? And this sign? Now that's just something to think about, but let's get back to this sign. At this point, I'm going to speculate. I'm going to guess what I believe this sign is all about. Now, I'm just guessing, but I think this could be the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war. The reason I think that is because of the reference in Ezekiel about the 7 years that the Jews will be burning the weapons. If the 7 years is a reference to the tribulation period, then that war would have to start in the first year of the tribulation. And if the Jews start their sacrifices on this day, God would stand up for them and defeat Gog in that war. But that's just a guess. I'm just speculating on this. We don't really know what this sign is telling us. But make no mistake, this is a sign. To have all of these pieces grouped together like this is too much coincidence. So I do believe this sign is the start of the sacrifices. So 2,300 days before this sign, follow the blue, is Daniel 8:14 on August 28, 2014. The other thing I want to talk about in this video are the 3 different endings. You've had to have noticed by now that this is an end, this is an end, and this is an end. This is not what we were taught growing up. But then our ancestors did not have the signs that we have today. However, they were very close to how it looks like it's going to play out. It's just a little bit different. But we're going to go over and we're going to look at this ending and what's involved there. If you remember back in my 7 angels and 7 plagues, how I figured out what the 7 angels were, it was because of this eclipse and Matthew 24:29 and Revelation 19:17, and I saw an angel standing in the sun. Now I want you to pay attention to what happens right after this. And he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. Now, if this angel standing in the sun is representative of Matthew 24:29's eclipse, then this is my theory on how everything plays out. The Matthew 24:29 eclipse is the same angel standing in the sun from Revelation 19:17. At this point, the tribulation of those days are ended, just like Matthew 24:29 says, and this is where the Battle of Armageddon starts. So the tribulation of those days ends here, the Battle of Armageddon ends here, and 45 days later, that's 17-hour days, shortened days from this point, we get the end here. Now again, this is just speculation. I'm just guessing here. But from all of my research in finding all of this stuff, I wasn't expecting to find 3 different endings. But it seems to be that that's the way it is. So we now have 9 of the numbers out of the Bible. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's only one more. When I find that, if I find that one, I'll make a part 4 to this series.